So this divergence is of great concern to a lot of economically minded people. You have been tracking this divergence between the Canadian and the U.S. economy. What's the underlying cause?
Well, there's no single underlying cause here. Otherwise, it would be an easy challenge to fix. I mean, Canada's economy, like any, is large and complex. And recent years, there have been a lot of really significant challenges for the Canadian economy. We had a big drop in commodity prices in
Mm.
2015 and 16, for example. We've had considerable policy uncertainty over the past decade. And I don't just mean domestic policy uncertainty, but our trading relationship had some rocky years there not too long ago with the United States and may very well see, uh, I guess we will see soon whether it has some rocky
Right.
years to come.
That's a total cop out. I mean, there's always going to be issues and things happening, but the real reason why our economy has stagnated is crystal clear. We have too much government spending, taxes are too high, and there's an anti business sentiment in this country, which translates into an environment that is hostile to business interests. Decades of consistent consistent inflation has eroded consumer savings. Well, if you don't have consumer savings, then the only thing that can grow the economy is business investment, especially foreign business investment. And yet, at the same time, the Canadian government has consistently set up roadblocks and barriers to foreign investment coming into our country. We need to cut taxes, cut government spending, and create a more hospitable business environment and a fairer business environment where you don't have corporate welfare and subsidies giving huge advantages to some companies at the expense of the others. The reality is, we no longer have free markets in Canada. What we have is a form of 21st century mercantilism where the state picks winners and losers, companies are bailed out. You've got all sorts of graft, like, for example, the contract in Quebec, they're spending billions of dollars to subsidize a company so that they can give high speed internet to a few people in northern Quebec when already Starlink is up and running and they could just people could just buy it themselves. You don't need a massive government subsidy to a company to have that happen when the technology's in place, the market's already in place. So we've got too much corporate welfare, taxes are too high, the government is too dirigist, too interventionist. We need to embrace free markets, fair and open competition, and end this philosophy of the government being constantly involved in the economy. That's what's holding us back. That's what's causing productivity to lag.
Very trade exposed economy, that was no small thing for us to deal with. But that gap between us and the United States is not just large today, it's been widening at a pace that we haven't seen in generations. And so an increase now over the next couple of years in the effective tax rate that we levy on investment. So really moving in the opposite direction of where we should. So there's no one thing to point to here. There's lots of compounding factors.
So Mark Carney has many things to deal with as he's been brought on to advise the Liberal leader and the Prime Minister on a productivity and economic recovery plan. But when I looked at the analysis you did, it was published on the webpage of the Hub, you reported that if Canada kept pace with the U.S. over the past 2 years, the economy will be 8.5% larger, about $6,200 more in income per Canadian each year. Could we have kept pace with the U.S. over the last 2 years? Because I look at $1 trillion debt at the federal level, a $40 billion deficit, and the political difficulties around that, and you look at the U.S., you talk about printing money and running deficits. They seem to have no limit to their debt, despite the showdowns they have every once in a while about the debt ceiling, and a willingness to just spend and do things like the IRA, uncapped incentives. Could Canada even keep pace with the U.S. if it tried without breaking the bank?
Well, I think the right question there is maybe not could Canada, because there the answer might be maybe, but should Canada have kept pace with the United States? And there the answer is quite clearly no. They have a
Right.
really significant fiscal challenge in the United States that they're going to need to wrestle with, and they're going to have another one of these debt ceiling fights at the end of this month. So the U.S. really does have irresponsible fiscal policy, and that
Hold on a second here. So they just transitioned from talking about, or they equivocated deficit spending with economic growth, because the question was about, could Canada have kept pace with the economic growth of the United States? And then the answer is no, because it would blow up the deficit. That doesn't even make sense. Part of the problem is with using statistics like GDP, because people like to think in the media, and politicians and economists like to equate GDP with the health of the economy. And if you accept that as true, then it's probably true that yes, deficit spending does make the GDP number go up, but it doesn't actually mean the economy has grown. Quite the opposite. Government spending makes the economy weaker. So we got to be very careful with our terms here. Could we have kept up with the United States in terms of economic growth? Absolutely, we could have. Not through running deficits and printing money, which might make the GDP figure go up, but are actually harmful to the economy. But by enacting sensible pro-market, pro-business reforms, like cutting taxes, cutting government spending. I mean, that's what it all comes back to. At the end of the day, you want a stronger economy, you need less government. It really is that simple. There's a certain amount of wealth produced each year, and the more that the political elite tax and then spend on themselves, the less there is for economic growth, for reinvestment in the economy, for new businesses or the expansion of old businesses. I mean, the United States is almost as bad as Canada when it comes to too much government. It's worse in some respects. They've got a global military empire. They're running highly inflationist monetary policies. Their welfare state is almost as lavish as ours. So it wouldn't be difficult for Canada to surpass the United States in terms of economic growth. But what I find very interesting is this implicit connection between deficit spending, inflation, and economic growth, which both the questioner and the commenter seem to link together, when in reality, long-term economic growth does not happen because of government spending, deficit spending, or inflation. These things actually hurt the economy, hurt economic growth.